Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Notorious, as well as the latest episode of the Blacklist. Starting off with Notorious, picking up a little bit where last week's episode left off with Oscar firing Jake. In this episode, we have, that situation continuing where Jake, asked Julia for an interview. So he's on LHL, and he's talking about the fact is that he releases it out, being like, oh, yep, Jake had an affair with my wife, like, the night before she died, and then kind of pointing a picture, being like, hey, maybe he's the one that killed her. It's like, oh, you're pointing a finger at Jake as a possible suspect. It's like, I wouldn't put it past him. But then Julia / Louise kind of twisted back on him. Is like, but the fact of the matter is, if you knew about the affair, who's to say that that wouldn't give you extra motive to, kind of put the ball back in your corner for you to be her killer? And it kind of shuts him up, because Julia, I was kind of hoping she was going to do. I was like, oh, don't do this behind Jake's back. But she didn't. She informed Jake, and they basically took this opportunity to kind of smack him in the face, kind of get that little smug smile off his face. Which Jake used this as an opportunity to kind of convince Oscar to hire him back. Which Oscar begs the question, like, okay, is this for me or is this for yourself? Which I'd say really it's for both. For Oscar's sake, it's because it's like, no one's going to like defend you harder than I am. Because for me, the more time the cops are looking at you as a suspect and everything, less time they're really looking for Sarah's real killer. So is that regard. Plus, it's also like, I'm good at my job, I'm not going, well, it just kind of ties in with the second reason I was saying it, I was about to say is, his reputation. It is for him in the regard of like, it's like all the stuff he's saying is going to, ruin the firm's reputation as well as his. And I'm sure like, as Oscar kind of put it, it's like, oh, just that ego of his. So for ego purposes, he won't let that kind of, that type of thing stand. So it's like even more reason why to kind of keep Oscar on the lot, to kind of convince him, like, I'm on your side, which he is, because he cared about Sarah a lot. That's the main reason why he's doing this. Personally, I don't think he really cares about Oscar. The only reason why he brought Oscar on in the first place is probably most likely out of like consideration for Sarah, because Sarah's probably the one that kind of introduced Jake and Oscar. So it's like, it's mainly for her sake. So I'm really personally, I don't think he cares about Oscar that much. But, on a personal level, no. But I think on a professional level, he has to, because that is his client. So it's like he, like with anyone, he's going to give his client the best he can give. He's going to give him, the Jake special essentially. So, which as the episodes develop, because Max still being set on the whole, Jake being kind of a suspect thing, he ends up revealing to Jake, it's like, oh yeah, actually Sarah was pregnant. And he was like, wait, what? It's like, yeah, the autopsy shows that at some point she gave birth. She ends up bringing it up to Oscar. Oscar's kind of like, that never came up because it's something she never talked about Jake with either. And that ends up leading to an interesting conversation between them, because like Jake is like, so we, she probably gave the baby up for adoption or something. It's like, we should go out there and find the baby. And Oscar's like, why? He's like, it's like a little piece of Sarah left. For him, it's like, tracking down this baby might be a way of being like, oh, keeping a little bit of Sarah alive. But I also think it's because, he didn't know at the time, but like that pregnancy, because she ended up finding out from her brother that the pregnancy happened back when she was 17. So I'm thinking on some level he might have was thinking like, because he didn't really know the years, so it's like maybe it was between them and she gave the baby up for adoption and just never said anything to anyone. But it could, for one reason it could be like, oh, the child could have been his. He didn't never really go that route, but that's where my brain went. So I was thinking like maybe he thought the same way, but also because he says it himself, like a piece of Sarah will live on through that child. So it's like extra reason to find that child, to show it that it still has family life, even though her like the child's mom isn't in this world anymore. But Oscar's like, I don't want to have anything to do with it. And Jake's kind of like, what? He's like, yeah, with each day that's going by, I know my wife less and less. The fact that she had an affair with you, the whole passport situation. And it's like, really, dude? Like, like you don't have your secrets. Let's not forget about the whole situation between you and Levi, or what was that? I already forgot the screen name he was using, that you were kind of like having an affair with him in that regards. It was just getting all emotionally attached to another person, even though you're married, Sarah. Let's not forget the original affair anyway, the fact that you beat her like up afterwards. So it's like, don't sit there and try to judge Jake. Yes, Jake made a huge mistake. It's just, like I said, it's one of those things. It's like you get around your exes and just those flames kind of rekindle a little bit. You just kind of tend to do stupid things. I said it then and I'm saying it again, but So, but what we did find out is that the child, like I said, was from back in 17 years ago, when Sarah was 17. Sadly, the child died like sometime after she gave birth because the child was sick, and it's something that their family, has kept hush about because it was just kind of their background and everything. It's kind of like that kind of brought shame upon the family, so no one talked about it. It's kind of, being so young and getting pregnant, probably, outside of marriage and stuff like that, because a lot of people frown upon like, a baby being born out of wedlock, so. Now, the thing is, could this be something her brother could be lying about? Could there be more to it than that? I don't know. Because what we also got in the episode was the fact is that Jake ended up getting some mail from Sarah, because it was going to the Keaton residence, obviously. And so he's looking at it, and there's like, about a storage unit. He goes there, ends up finding out his name's actually on it. He goes in there, looks around a little bit, didn't really see anything. Quickly went back, because he's being called to be on LHL to kind of talk about the whole, the whole affair situation, as well as being welcome, how he, is being hired back as Oscar's lawyer. But then things take a really messed up turn when it's like, oh yeah, the cops got an anonymous tips, because they were waiting out the moment Jake left. They went inside the storage room because there were cops who had gotten warned or whatever. Looked in there, happened to find the murder weapon that killed Sarah, the knife. And it's like, oh, Jake is totally guilty. And it's like, wait, what? For one, you have Julia being very nice about it. She's like, no. All right, Louise, cut the commercial. Her boss pushes her out of the way. It's like, no, don't cut the commercial. What you need to do is get a zoom in on his face, and it's just like, just everything's falling apart. Jake is being set up super hard. Now, I've mentioned it multiple times, my theory that this whole thing is fake, that somehow Sarah is actually still alive. She did something to kind of fake her death. That, or like I said, this whole situation was some kind of scheme with her and her partner is currently trying to set him up. I don't know, there's multiple possibilities. That's why I'm kind of tying into the fact that's like, was it this whole baby thing really, I feel like her brother has a bigger part to play in this. I don't know. I still feel like, because he keeps coming with this new stuff here and there. So it's kind of like, maybe, I mean, he didn't never mention his baby thing, but then again, it's kind of like a kept secret. So it's not something you really want to air. It's personal family stuff. So obviously you wouldn't bring it up, but it's just, I don't know. I feel like the brother's probably hiding other stuff too. I'm just curious to see, because I'm still, I don't want to do it, but I can't help but think this whole thing was a setup by Sarah. I really truly believe that, and that's why I've said it over and over again. I think her and her partner went in on this. Whether Sarah's still somehow alive, which I don't think that's possible, but I threw it out there anyway because you never know. But I think her partner might have killed her just because maybe Sarah was getting cold feet because it's like Jake being back in her life. It kind of made her like, you know what, I don't want to do this because the whole past. I think all that stuff was set up before everything happened. It just became too much. I think originally she probably was going to use Jake, but then her heart kind of got in the way, and that's why her partner killed her. That's what I'm thinking. So this whole thing is whoever the partner is trying to set up Jay, and it's just, and the fact is Max is going after Jake hard. It's like you get an anonymous tip to kind of look into Jake. You're very suspicious of him and whatnot. It's just like, I mean, really, would the person who killed Sarah really keep themselves so close to the investigation? I mean, it's like a killer would try to keep themselves as far away from the investigation as possible. But I guess it's like when you think about it, it's like that's kind of the best type of sociopath. It's like they become a part of the investigation, so they make sure that you're always not on their trap. But it's like I don't know. I mean, because he did say at the end of the last episode, Max was like, "Oh, I'm gonna give me everything you can on Jake." So it's like wonder. Is part of this because of whatever he dug up in Jake's past or something? Maybe it has to do with his dad that we kind of found out a little bit about. Was that last episode or episode before last? So maybe that's kind of playing a role in his decision to kind of go after Jake as hard as he is, especially considering the fact that things are happening between him and Julia. It's kind of like, I mean, it's like he was talking about, oh, let's have dinner and stuff like that. And it's just kind of, I don't mind you using me, just let it kind of be reciprocated, I get to use you from time to time, let's go on a date and stuff like that. So it's like, because Max doing what he did, he could have given Julia a little warning, but he did, mainly because he wanted the cameras rolling. He wanted to make a big spectacle out of it, just kind of like how Jake did with the whole kind of manipulating the whole situation with Oscar getting arrested at Sarah's funeral, just kind of garner sympathy for Oscar in that shape or form. But this is kind of the opposite effect of just trying to demonize him a little bit more, just kind of be like, oh, making a very public thing. It's just, arresting him live on air, plus the whole thing about his affair coming to light. So it makes you wonder what Oscar's going to really think about this too. Is like after he brought up the whole fact of like, oh, trusting in him again, and it's like it makes you wonder, does Oscar? I don't believe Oscar really thinks Jake does it. He was just mad because it's like, you slept with my wife. It's like, calm down. But I mean, which is an excusable thing, but it's like, to me, it looked like he was kind of like, they just weren't happy. I mean, it's a situation like that where it's like, rather than cheat, you should just go ahead and get divorced and just move on. That way you be simply happier that way. So I think it was more so just kind of just jab at Jake. I mean, more so than anything, it was his probably own defense, his own way of kind of defending himself, being like, oh, taking the pressure off him being a suspect and turn it against Jake. So. But that was just kind of like, I guess, the overall plot, across the whole season and everything. This particular episode, essentially, there was a girl missing. Her name was Emily. It was a whole situation where the family is actually clients of Jake's, which led to an interesting conversation between Julia and her boss. Julia's like, okay, they're Jake's clients, like, he owes me a favor, so I'll get him on the show. And he's like, okay, you just publicly threw out the fact is that he had an affair with a dead woman, and now you're talking about he owes you a favor for it. It's like, okay, that's a bit twisted, but good job. But basically what happens is there's a competition kind of news station run by this woman named, is it Callie Callowell? Callie Julia doesn't like the way Callie does this because it's kind of like, she's got, and I guess in Julia's eyes, she's kind of second rate. And basically she paid the family like $100,000 to come on her show, because Julia and their news station doesn't really do that. They don't pay people, kind of, I guess, the purity of what they do and whatnot. So, but the family needs it because we need money to pay for all this other stuff, like how search parties and stuff like that. We need the money. So they decided to go. Jake tried to talk them out of it, but that didn't work. So it's kind of, once again, that gray area of the show where it's like, for the worst reasons, like basically Julia got in her head because Megan kind of threw out there, like, there's actually like 600 girls that, I don't know what the statistic she had was, like 600 girls that go missing in a year or something like that. And it's like the only reason why Emily is getting attention, blonde, blue eyes, is kind of what, they were saying. It's like, oh, she's a princess in a castle. So she kind of garners a lot more attention. And so basically Julia kind of to battle against Callie was kind of like, you know what? We're going to take one of those missing girls and make her into a princess too, so that America kind of cares about her. So like I said, it's for the wrong reasons, but it's really like, hey, the fact is, just to kind of one up you, I'm going to take this girl and kind of push you aside, being like, oh, the fact is that, oh, there's all these missing people that you really don't care about. You're focusing on Emily, but what about all these other missing girls that you never mention anything about, just because they don't garner enough attention? Like, they wouldn't be good for your ratings type of thing. Like I said, bad reasons, but it ends up doing a good thing. So it doesn't balance out. Like I said, just because you do a good thing doesn't change the fact that you kind of started it for shitty reasons. I mean, I was actually thinking Megan was going to call her out on it, but I guess it's like, Megan kind of understands the belly of the beast, so she's kind of like not going to. It kind of looked like she kind of had a look on her face when Julia was kind of running everything through, had the missing girl Rosa's mom on air. And now what ended up happening is, like, she ended up talking about this stuff about how the cops refused to actually ping her cell phone because it's like, no, it would cost $150. That's not within her budget. It's like, oh, she'll come home eventually. She still had to come home. And, the interesting thing is, though, like I said, good versus bad. Like, Julia actually became invested in this investigation. And so she got concerned about Rosa, actually started looking into a lot of things, in particular her boyfriend, Braden. The fact is that, like, Callie went as far as kind of rebuttaling what Luis in particular was told to kind of say. The fact is, like, kind of like how they demonized Callie for the way she does things and stuff like that. It's like, oh, we actually care about her. The fact is, the police looked at her boyfriend Braden and arrested him and stuff like that. It's like, no, the police looked at him as a suspect, but they let him go. He has nothing to do with her disappearance. Julia kind of went to him alone, which she was kind of like, yo, you're like that news lady. Oh, you're from the news station too. Get away from me. You're just like that Callie woman that kind of demonized me and kind of made me seem like the bad guy, stuff like that. You're all the same. You might be from different network. You're all the same to me. Which is kind of, in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, you didn't learn from the Levi situation, how badly kind of handling things on your own can go. But I guess, it's part of her job. It's just the way she is. Like, she kind of got over it. And I guess, she's not going to let the fear of what happened then kind of stop her from doing her job, from getting the story. I love the twisted story of being like, oh yeah, that there was, in fact, a lot more to that story. It turns out that the restaurant Rosa was working at, is actually a drug business where they're selling drugs and stuff like that. Essentially, she stole some money from them because basically, we end up finding out is her mom sold her. And then Julia was like completely disgusted with the mom. It's like, you had the nerve to come on television, make up all these lies and crying tears. It's like your daughter's in a situation because of you. It's like, rather than putting herself in that situation because, she sold her daughter to kind of work in her place, that basically any money that was kind of made went to her mom instead of herself. So she never actually made any money. So basically what she was going to do was going to run away with Braden. But she ended up stealing like $2,000, but she ended up getting found out, and the guy Miguel basically kidnapped her. And so that's how everything worked, because, Julia kind of figured it out because she had Ryan tailing Braden, and it's the fact that he's getting all this money and stuff like that. It's like, oh, is he running? It's like, no, when he decides place, he's not packing. And then she's like, oh, there's another reason for it. And it turns out Rosa was being held, and like he basically had to pay a $10,000 ransom, but he couldn't get up the money. He sold everything he had. He was still $5,000 short. And it's like, she meant everything to him. She changed his life around, got him to go back to school. Like, she saved him. And so it's just like he wanted, kind of return a favor. He loves her, and he wanted to do the same for her. And Julia luckily was able to kind of, convince the mom. It's like, okay, do something good for your daughter. It's like, you sit up here, you're saying like, no, you just want to get your daughter back so you can make it up to her. Like, even during the whole situation when she was in the car, the van with Max, and they're kind of listening in on a conversation. Even Julia admits, she's like, yeah, there might be a little part of her that cares, but really all it is about the money. Because with Rosa going, she doesn't get that money that she had that was coming in for her before now. So I don't know. I kind of wanted to kind of give her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it's like she really is trying to make up for the past, but nah. Because when you think about, like, when you look at that situation, and even how Julia commented on the fact that she told her to kind of tear it up a little bit to make it a little more convincing. The fact is that she did it is kind of like, yo, like, she's definitely faking it. She's doing all this to avoid going to jail, because Julia is like, do this or I tell the police what's up. So luckily, they were able to get her back with the information they gathered. So, and it ended in a very interesting way. Well, besides the fact is that Rosa and Braden they left town and everything. What makes it even more interesting is when the story, like, it came up and Megan was like, oh, you let them leave town? Well, what about putting them on air? And he's like, putting yourself on air, because the fact is you were a badass. You helped solve this. But she was like, no, I don't want to be a part of it. The only thing I'll put up there is the story. She's like, eventually we'll do a piece about kind of like where they are now, like, the aftermath and when everything's kind of settled. So it kind of balances out. You kind of see that little bit of the good inside of Juliet. Like I said, starting off with the worst reasons, but coming around for the best reasons. So now, the episode ended on a huge downer. I mean, besides, Jake being arrested thing, you end up finding out that the police ended up finding Emily's body. Because what ended up happening, kind of showing you how Callie is, and it's kind of the question of Callie versus Julia. Julia kind of does some shady stuff, but Callie was warned ahead of time, because essentially the whole thing came out that basically Emily was doing kind of a cam girl situation. And now basically the theory was kind of like, okay, maybe one of the people that took her was someone that watched her on her cam girl thing. Now, Jake came to Callie and told her not to say anything about it, but Callie was like, oh, you're throwing all of these ifs, ands, or buts, like kind of these theories. It's like, but you don't have any evidence to back it up. And Jake was like, okay, you can have me on your channel. Basically, what he was on LHL to kind of talk about the whole Oscar thing. He's like, you can have me for that. And just don't put this out there, the whole cam girl thing, because it's like, it could endanger her life. Her kidnappers could be like, oh, this is out, so they end up killing her for it. But Callie, kind of being the way she is, didn't listen. Because, basically, Julia doesn't... Like, you could look at the way Julia kind of spins everything in a certain fashion, true, but, try to make you kind of see things one way or another. But it is like, she does give you all the facts. I don't know, it's hard to say. Like, Julia has her despicable side when you look at things, but, like I said, right reason, wrong thing, right reasons, so at the end of the day, the ends justify the means, I guess. It's really, really hard to say that, but still. But the fact of the matter is, because of what Callie said, that could be a leading reason as to why Emily died. So I'm assuming that's going to be a big part of the next episode. I would assume so, but maybe not. Maybe that's something that's just never going to be touched on. I mean, really, I guess that depends on everything. Like, maybe we get like a different thing. Maybe it'll be kind of like a three-way story. It'd be like, okay, the whole Emily situation, plus a new situation that's come up, plus Jake's situation, maybe, or maybe Emily's situation will be the focus of it. I don't know, but it's like, I'm sure things are going to backfire for Callie, because she was actually tearing up a little bit at the end there. It's like, the fact is that, Julia kind of brought it up at the beginning of the episode. Oh, it's like, okay, here's that part where she cries up, and here she's tearing up. Here's tearful Callie. But I'm sure those tears at the end were real, because she realizes, like, oh, she most likely played a part in it. She was told not to release that information because it could endanger Emily's life, but she was just so concerned about getting the story that it ended up working against her like that. Like, it's kind of interesting, because like I said, because it seems like hard to tell whether Julia would do something like that or not. Because at this point, what we know about her, it's like, it's hard to say whether she would do something like that or not. Because for her, all that's important is the story. Would she do that? I don't know. Like, I think if Jake came to her and was like, okay, please don't do that, she wouldn't do it. So, but I think Julia kind of has enough common sense not to do that either. It's just, I don't know. It's like, because doing that also meant it was going to hurt the parents' chances of finding a little girl, because the moment that came out, a lot of people that were willing to help before backed away. People didn't call as much. Even their like friends and neighbors that kind of really were calling often, very sporadically, like they stopped calling as often to help out, just because that whole thing came out. Because a lot of people are going as far as saying like, oh, she did this, this, and this. Like, oh, she being a cam girl. It's like, oh, she was begging for it. She was asking for it. It's like, no, no matter what the case may be, she might have done something she shouldn't have done, but that doesn't justify her being taken, So I'm very interested to see what they decide to do with that, whether that's just going to be a storyline that's kind of just left there on that sour note, or will we kind of find out what happened to her next episode. Very curious. And now moving on to the Blacklist. So many big reveals this episode, and first of all, the whole situation with that guy Renee is like, I thought he was going to be a bigger part. I mean, he played his big role in a sense, even though he has such a small part, because it's like, oh yeah, here's this guy who basically, when people's money and their assets are frozen, here he comes and he basically gives them a loan, but basically the collateral for such a loan ends up being the fact is that they have to give him all their frozen assets once those assets become unfrozen. Basically, he kind of loans money to bad guys and lets them do what they need to do so that they can eventually get their assets back. Nevertheless, because the fact is he isn't necessarily important. He is important in the sense of he's connected to Kirk, and it ends up being like he was kind of loaning money to Kirk, and then basically Reddington used him as a way of smoking Kirk out, because basically Kirk killed him. What I was thinking is like, oh man, totally Kirk got faked out, because that's not really Renee. It is like, oh no, that really is Renee. I thought they switched him out because they made such a big deal to put the bag over his head. Like, that's why I was kind of like, okay, there's no way that was kind of a thing. But it's like, nope, that totally was a thing. I thought that was a thing because I thought it was like, oh, they replaced him with someone else, and it's like, oh, that other person is dead. It's like, no. Because I was thinking that conversation was going to come up and being like, oh, you used some innocent person as a stand-in for Ray. It's like, no, this person I let die wasn't that much of an innocent person. But in his case, it was like, no, Renee's dead. It's like, oh, you let him die? It's like, well, he was a terrible human being, Harold. You got to admit that. Then the whole situation between Reddington and Liz is still pissed about, because the fact that she knows that Kirk is her dad now. The fact is, Reddington's trying to defend it, being like, you never know what's going. Like, they could easily fake a lot of stuff. It's like he could fake a blood test. It's like that's not really out of the question. She's like, what about all these memories I have? It's like, just because he was with your mom doesn't necessarily mean that he was your dad. Could have just been like your stepfather or something like that. But she's like, I remember growing up with him, all this other stuff. So it's kind of, we see kind of the divide between them. Because it's happened periodically throughout the series, but I think this is kind of the biggest divide that's ever existed between them, is because it's like, because now she has concrete proof of like, Reddington has lied to me since the very beginning. He's known about my past and stuff like that. Even a person, he's known about a person that knows about my past, specifically that person being my father. And it's just kind of like, at first it would seem like she kind of brought up the fact is that like, oh yeah, me and Reddington having that argument, we made sure it was loud and kind of like, very apparent because basically the FBI had gotten hacked by a group known as the Thrushes is what they were called. Basically, for the right price, basically they go after the unhackable. They basically do things just because out of for money, as well as just kind of sport of being like, hey, we get through things. So it turns out that apparently the FBI's like system that they've been using has basically been hacked, and which affects Iran on multiple levels, but I'll get to that soon enough. So basically they put on that big argument because they knew that's how Kirk found out about Renee and ended up putting a bullet in him, but that was all for a smoke screen. Because I like how Reddington got everyone together to had a pizza delivery service basically deliver pizza to everyone for noticing, like show up here. They end up showing up somewhere. Basically, all the technology is something that can't be hacked. It's very analog based technology, so nothing digital that can be nothing that has such a digital connection like like a phone or stuff like that could easily be hacked. Well, you end up, so that whole argument was part of them playing it. Even Rustler was kind of like, oh man, I really thought you guys hated each other. But she's like, yeah, I really do. I really meant what I said. I'm only stomaching working with Reddington, even going as far as calling him a snake when she was talking to Harold, that she's only tolerating working with him until she gets Agnes back. Which, Harold is kind of like, you might not like the way he's doing it, but he is trying his best to get Agnes back. But for her, that's not enough. It doesn't change the fact is that, she blames him for a lot of things. Blame, like, her life being upside down. The fact is that he's lied to her so much. Which, there's an interesting conversation between Harold and Reddington. It's like, Reddington knew things were going to be tough, but he didn't expect him to be this tough. He's like, Harold's like, well, what did you expect? Going after a guy like Kirk, putting him on a list. And then Reddington's like, actually, Kirk was never on the blacklist. It's like, why would you not have a guy like him on the list? It's because he never wanted this situation. He never wanted him and Liz to cross paths. That's why he didn't have her on the list, because he never wanted them together. The only reason why Kirk ever got added to the list was because he came after Liz first. I mean, for one, it's kind of drawing it back to the Cabal. They put her real name as Masha out there. If they had never done that, Reddington wouldn't have to worry about Kirk coming after her. That's the only reason why Kirk was able to track them down, was because the Cabal released her real name. So he knew that she was alive and well. So, but now for him, it's like everything he's done has been to protect her. Like, he even went as far as saying he has never lied to her, which I'm inclined to kind of believe her. Yes, he's never told her the entire truth, but I like to think Reddington has probably never lied to her. Probably. Like I said, there's still the chance. Like, I'm saying, like I threw it out there before, there's lies and truth in everything. So it could just as easily be that Reddington hasn't lied to her. He hasn't told her everything, but, he's admitted some truth, but he's never outright lied to her. So, like, that's why I'm getting the feeling. Like I said, there's probably truth and lies with everything between Kirk and, Reddington, because that was a big part in this episode, her loyalty being split. Like, you saw it happening last episode, you see it even more in this episode, because she doesn't want anyone getting to Kirk before her, because for her, if even the FBI gets Kirk first, that means they'll lock him up in some deep dark hole, and she'll never get access to him again, never learn about her past. She doesn't have Sam, her stepfather, she doesn't have her mom, everyone that could basically give her answers. Kirk is the last one, because she can't trust Reddington anymore, because who's to say anything he says is the truth? Everything is most likely a lie. So he's the only real connection she has to her past now. So, which we know it's not true, because I brought it up last episode. The fact is, her grandfather's still in play, but whether Reddington's going to go down that road, I don't know. I think the reason why he's not going down that road is because there's probably a lot about Liz's past he doesn't want her to know. Like, the whole reason of the whole shooting her dad thing, which she still believes is a lie. I don't think it was. I think there's truth to that. Whether she killed him or not, I don't know. But, I mean, the fact is, Kirk is her dad, apparently. So, I mean, because even the woman that works with Kirk was like, it seems there's seeds of doubt. Like, I feel like why would she phrase it like that if it was 100% true? Like, there is, like I said, there's some truth to it, but like, more so than anything, it is meant to kind of create a divide between Reddington and Liz, which, it has, and I'm very curious to see what that divide does as the season progresses. But kind of getting back to it, I said that the whole situation with the hackers, the Thrushes, how it affected Iran two ways. One was kind of physically, he's the computer guy, he's the tech guy. It's like, there's no way someone hacked the system. And it's like, oh, they hacked the system. So it affects him that way as pride. But also because you end up finding out his girlfriend is actually part of this same group. She's been using him the entire time. Samar literally brought it up last episode. I kind of like commented on it. I was like, that'd be kind of interesting if you end up finding she's the bad guy. And lo and behold, she's a bad guy. You never doubt Samar's gut. All right, she's like, there's something about her. That just don't fit right. I was like, dude, she nailed it. Part of you could be like, yo, it's jealousy, but I knew I had to find. I was like, but I trust Samara. It's like, it's got to be more than that. Jealousy played a part, but that was definitely more than. So basically, I had Iran kind of playing undercover a little bit, kind of basically having to pretend everything was okay and everything. Side note, I want to really quickly bring up the fact is, second show this week, especially an NBC show that has brought up Stranger Things. Because earlier this week, it was not earlier this week, literally yesterday, Blind Spot brought up Stranger Things, and they literally brought it up this episode because that's what Iran and his girlfriend were binging. And I was like, dude, I guess that kind of showed you just the impact of how big Stranger Things has gotten, because everyone's like obsessed and in love with that show for good reason, obviously. It's just, I've never really, not that I know of. I'm sure there's a lot of shows that kind of shape a generation or whatever like that. But it's just, I've never seen a show latch onto so many people that you see it pop up everywhere. Stranger Things related stuff here and there, using the title card for different things. Just like it being referenced in two big shows like Blind Spot. I know it's just weird to me that just happened. It's just like, and in the same week, and two shows on the same network. It's maybe in some shape or form, NBC has some kind of connection to Stranger Things for them to just kind of be throwing that title out like that. What are the chances that happens? Literally back-to-back nights of a TV show is mentioning that. Who knows? Like I said, it just kind of shows you the impact of the show itself. But nevertheless, he had to go undercover, pretend everything was okay. She was getting a little suspicious, and he was like, oh, yo, I'm in love with a different woman. And she's like, Samara, isn't it? He's like, what? No, I'm in love with a different woman. It's not Samara. But things did kind of get interesting between him and Samara because, for one, he found, it finally dawned on him after she kissed him on the cheek and everything, which was like, oh, super sweet. It dawned on him, it's like, oh yeah, the whole dinner thing, all that food she got, that was all your idea, wasn't it? Because she knows him better than anyone else. But also because she's like, don't worry, like, no matter what happens, I got your back. Know that I got you. And then it's like, she better hope that backup gets to her first, because if it doesn't, I'm gonna be the one that gets to her first, and I'm gonna mess that bitch up. And I was like, okay, go Samar, being protective about the guy you like, you go girl, type of thing. That's just down my brain, because I wanted Samar and Iran together just because it was like totally obvious that they liked each other, which we kind of see a little bit more of that. Samar talking about the fact is, I'm not transferring anymore. I'm like, hell yeah, because I was wondering if that was. I'm glad they slid that in the episode. Because I was wondering if that was something we're just going to have to be wondering in the back of our minds if she decides to leave or not. But she canceled her transfer, which is like, yes. But like, with every good show, it's kind of like, the fact is that they're happy means that something's going to happen. You just know it is, because can't nobody ever be 100% happy without something completely coming to kind of screw it up. So, but we see them having like tacos and stuff and enjoying everything. But, side note, his girlfriend got arrested, which, even though she's a hacker, she can handle herself pretty well because she was tossing and beating the crap out of Iran. Luckily, the others kind of got there when they did. He was handling his own, too. He kind of got some, pushes and even whacked her across the head with something he picked up off the shelf. But nevertheless, getting back to the episode, it was hard to say what direction everything was going, because it's like whether Liz was telling the truth, whether Liz was lying, because it was hard to say like whose side she was really on. Like I said, that was a big part of the episode, like whose side is she on? Because the fact is, she's calling Kurt, warning him, is like, yo, everyone knows this is a setup. Reddington knows, the FBI knows, because this is a setup that you're being set up, because it's like we got to your people, we got to one of them, which only one of the Thrusters actually got arrested, being Iran's girlfriend, but I guess she helped bring down the rest of them. Maybe that's something we'll see next episode. But nevertheless, the fact is the whole situation played out, and he's just kind of there was a point where Kirk was standing on the edge, because it wasn't 100% it wasn't the setup that she made it out to be. It turns out to be a setup with in a setup because she's like, okay, they know about you and they're setting up a plan. Like, let's change venue and stuff like that, where we're going to meet and everything, different time. But the fact that she was working with Reddington, and she ended up bringing him along. And Alexander's like, I will go with this baby. And and then Reddington's like, you would kill yourself and bring the baby along with you just to keep her away from me. It's like, don't do that to the mother. And it basically, you see Liz kind of talking to him and being like, please, if you love me, if you've ever loved me, then don't do this, which he did. He stepped down and they got Agnes back because, for her, she was kind of like, I know all this is about kind of like curing your disease, but he's like, if it was really just all about that, I could have easily taken you at any time. He wanted to get her permission to kind of do whatever it is necessary to save him. And so you have, like, at the end, you have the fact is that she's saying, like, me and Tom are moving out. We don't want a place that's bought by you. And Reddington kind of understands that, and he walks away with his back. He never actually looks at Liz while she's saying all that. He just puts on his hat and walks away. He says, like, yeah, I figured. So, like I said, very interested to see where that divide goes, like, what that means for the future. Like, an interesting thing is the fact that where they have Kirk locked up is a little box cell that they had Reddington locked up back in season 1, which we have not seen that in a while. So that was kind of nice. It's like, I guess you have to get someone of that threat level kind of locked up in it, and Alexander kind of fits that criteria. And so I'm very curious to know, like, is Liz actually going to help him? Because he is locked up and everything, but is she going to be willing to help him fix everything? Because it's like, as long as, he's still got time running out. So it's kind of like, is she going to help him fix his whole disease situation? I'm surprised Reddington handed him over. I guess Liz kind of forced his hand in the situation, because I'm pretty sure if Reddington had his way, he would have put a bullet in him. But then at the same time, he told Harold to let me handle this. He didn't want the FBI involved. So it's kind of like, for the fact is, for Kirk to happen, I really believe it was just kind of Liz kind of convinced Reddington not to kill him, which I feel like is what he wanted to do. But it might not even taken Liz saying anything, because he knows now that Liz knows that that's her dad, or at least strongly believes that's her dad. You don't know. Maybe Reddington's right and he faked it, which I don't. It's hard. It's really hard to tell. Because why? Because they're both good liars. Reddington is the greatest liar that's ever existed. Because if he wasn't good at lying, he wouldn't be in the situation he is. He wouldn't be the powerful man that he is without good levels of deceit. There are probably multiple times in his life he'd be dead right now if he wasn't as good at lying as he is. So. And final note I want to talk about is the Kate situation. With every so often we're getting a little bit more of a peek at that whole situation. Essentially, end up finding out why the guy is holding her hostage is because he doesn't want her to kind of. For one, he's worried. It's like, okay, you were out there, so whoever did this to you, I don't want them coming back. If I let you go, there's a chance that you might run off and tell someone else to come that you were held here and everything, and they come looking, or the fact that you might have friends that might be coming to look for you. Either way, he just doesn't want them in his business, which we still don't know what the hell that is. At first, Kate lies and says, like, no, I shot myself, the gun's out there. But he goes looking, but the fact is he has cameras basically posted up, they're motion activated. So he ends up seeing that she's lying, because it's like 3 people came in, only 2 people left. So it's like, I don't know, like, it makes you wonder how much Kate tells him to kind of ease his mind, because he's very paranoid. But it's like, what is he so paranoid about? What is he hiding? I mean, how would this all kind of, some shape or form this is going to tie back into the main story. And it's like, what will Reddington do if he finds out that Kate's still alive? Will he have a change of heart? Will Liz or Denbei kind of be the reason why he's like, okay, this time I won't kill you? I mean, but nevertheless, he tried to kill her. He messed her up pretty badly, and it'll probably take a while to get back to at least where she was before. So I don't know if she'd be willing to forgive Reddington. It's just kind of like I said, he can't let her live because he doesn't trust her. Plus, she knows too much. But I mean, he's going to be even more suspicious of her if he knowing that she's still alive and everything. And it's like that gives her even more motive to turn against him. So I don't know. Like I said, that whole situation is kind of being creaked out little bit by little bit. So I'm assuming that's going to lead to something very, very interesting. Just overall, just a very good episode, and cannot wait to see more. But that's really all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.